back onto the serious stuff, if we can be serious. What would be your ideal water and method for tench fishing?
It would be a natural water. I'm not a great lover of these man-made jobs. Ballast including in the natural water, because they turn natural, just like a bullbra. They turn into natural good fisheries after a short space of time. I would still go for the float.
Yeah.
Even today, I get more fun out of catching a tench on a float than I do a feeder. And yet, I would say 80%, at least 80%, are being caught on the feeder these days.
So I was going to go back to when you were saying about watching tench, and you'd watch them in the locks in Ireland, getting rid of the hook and going through the the reed stems, and you were talking about obviously them shedding the hook. Were you float fishing there when you were watching them doing that?
Oh yeah, we only float fished in.
Yeah, so you're virtually striking and and they're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying to John and Swanee, where the reeds finish, obviously growing, the next step is the deep water, and it could be 2-3 foot deeper, just off the reed edge. Well, they park their boat, always park their boat in front of the stakes, so they're actually parking their boat over the deep water, and the fish are actually swimming underneath them. They won't see them because they're working the edge of the reeds. That's where the fish are. John and I always used to park our boats the other side of the stakes, because they're all mountain ash stakes that they used for, or Fred used for tying the boat to.
So you're virtually going a little bit further.
We're going behind so we're actually, our front of our boat is actually on the front of the reed line.
Oh, okay.
So when you're pulling in a bit of flake after you've been fishing and it hasn't been taken, you pull it in there because it drops down in front of you. And you can end up with about 20-30 pieces of bread. And you look down, and the next thing you've got about half a dozen tench.
So you virtually put your boat into the reeds?
We're right on the edge of the reed. If you take a line, the outside line of the boat will be level with the edge of the reeds. And to my mind, as I say, you see the tench. You're not over the top of them, because as soon as they get into that shadow, as far as we were concerned, they darted off or back into the reeds. And
but when you're on about Swanee and John, you're on about John Bent and David Swan over in
Ireland, because they're still fishing Coosan.
And I think going back a few bulletins, I mean, that was a wonderful article.
Swanee writes a lovely article. He really does. Bill and I always say, and he does it all in freehand. Yeah, he hasn't got any electrical equipment. Unbelievable. Because he was an ex-teacher anyway.
Old school too.
Old school.
They caught some fabulous fish as well, didn't they?
They have. They started catching some bigger ones, but they were on the opposite corner to me. They were further. They were on the front end of L-shaped bay. Ray Webb was always on the top end of the L-shaped bay before it turned round to make the L. And my swim and John's swim, where we had all our big fish. We had four tench, all specimens on the rod at the same time. Stupid fishing with 4 rods in a boat. But at the same time, we didn't realise they were. It was that prolific out in front of us that there must have been hundreds of tench there. Because it was, we shouldn't have been out. It's as simple as that. Fred would have blown his trumpet. Been steaming in the ears because it was so rough.
Yes, I remember you saying it was stair rods, like you say, it was horizontal, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we went out, John and I. At that age, you don't worry about drowning and things like that. Boats turning over. I mean, we parked ourselves in, and we weren't doing. It wasn't doing too great. We just had the 2 rods, and John said, "I'm going to go further out." He said this is a bit. He said they're not staying in the edge here because the reeds are moving about and the lilies are turning over, lily leaves turning over. So he put another rod out, a sliding 3 foot to what he was fishing. He was going to be fishing 16 foot with a 13-foot rod. In a boat you can't cast it. So he went further out, and then he got a bite straight away, like further out. So I got my rod and put it up, and then we changed the 2 shorter ones. We took those out, and next thing we know, we got four tench on.
Yeah.
You know, there was three of them were three of them were specimen tench, and there was this one 413 male, and he caused more trouble than the other 3 put together. He was all over the place. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Because I think you've already touched on this. I'm going to go on to my next question. Could you tell us about the capture of your PB tench, which you kind of have really, haven't you? Which was your sort of 3 PBs as you've...
Well, the English PB was at Horton Kirby, Sutton Hone.
Yeah.
And of course my favourite type of fishing there, because of the type of lilies, like the weeds was all over the place, you never had a chance to really present a bait with a float. I used to do follow the bubbler. You know, either a worm or a bit of flake, and walk round. Because in those days you could walk round and fish any section of banking you wanted. Now you're governed by what the fishery wants you. You're going to fish there, and you're going to fish there because that's 11 and that's 12 and that's Before you'd walk all the way round.
Yeah. And
this particular John was carp fishing, which he always did. So I would never have called him a tench angler like Robertson. All the others, and I just went round the whole lake at shore level all the time. I came across this big goat willow type thing in the water, and I could see this bubbler out in front, and so I went out and waded out this way, and I couldn't get to it because something was sticking out. And so I went back again and went round onto the point of the willow, and managed to get a bait right on the bubbles, and it hadn't hardly hit the water, and it must have taken its slow sinking flake on the way down, and ended that. I've always been a bit doubtful. 8-2, I was stuck in the water. Somebody else weighed it, says 8-2, and you got to take their word for it.
Yeah.
It was a good fish, no two ways about it. It was a 7+ fish, but you know, I always think, was it 8-2 or was it just below 8? You know, it still holds him up. You know, so that's why I always say the 7-4 and this 5-13 male straight after it. That I regard that as my best fish, you know, because I know that was true.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying something earlier on, because we were chatting about waders, and you were saying you and John always used to have thigh waders on. So it's like in that instance there, you're walking around the lake, so if you had to sort of drop in the margins to follow your bubbler or such, you were just equipped for it. Yeah.
But I made there was the Abu Warwickshire Avon. The Avon they called it. Their first rod was the All England float rod, and then they had the Warwickshire. And when we fished down at Ringwood, I put lead in the base of the rod
on the boat. Yeah.
And so when you cut fishing away with a centre pin, and then as soon as you got the fish in the net, I could drop the butt of the rod, and it went straight down my waders and held it up. I've still got it there.
Oh, right.
He held the rod, and I know one person down there, Jim East. He actually copied it, put lead in the pipe, and there was a number of people who took photographs of us fishing up to our knees in, you know, right. Yeah, it's a good shot, isn't it? You got the river, and you got an angler sitting there.
Yeah. It seems to be like somebody was saying the other day. I think it was Chris Netto, and he asked a question on the Facebook page about waders and thigh waders, neoprene. So you never know, it might make a comeback. But you always used to see.
Well, I don't think it will, because you won't be allowed to.
I don't know.
You go to a fishery now, and you have to go where the management wants to put you.
Yeah.
If you want to fish in between somewhere, you can't. They're not allowed.
Yeah. I get what you're saying there, but I know there's quite a few fisheries, and it can depend on gravel pits. I know one pit I fish, and they'll say you're allowed to have waders or chest waders on to return a fish or to land a fish, because sometimes if the water levels drops, you can end up with little plateaus and you've got to go out. So yeah, it was just.
Horseshoe's not one of them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, due to the depth of you're straight into deep water.
Yeah, I think I always say on Sidewall Dam when we put for people who haven't been there, I say you can wade, but obviously not off the dam because you'll be straighting up to you. Okay, if you had to choose one bait to catch a tench, what would be the top of your list and why?
Well, I'd only use naturals anyway, because I never used boilies. Never used a boilie in my life, I don't think.
Right.
I've used a tutti frutti, called a carp.
Yeah.
That could act as a boilie, I suppose. I'd still have to go back to the worm.
Yep.
You know, it's the nearest thing to bloodworm and as a natural bait.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you find any river or pond where the ducks are being fed by Granny and Kitty, it's amazing how tench have changed, and just you catch them on bread because all the bread's going into the ducks, and they just mop it all up at night. You know, when it's dark, and they just come round and mop the lot up. So they are quite used to bread. And as I say, but I still reckon the old worm takes some beating.
No, absolutely. Well, it's made a resurgence anyway. But you're on about the bread. Funny enough, I was having that conversation with somebody just recently. And I know when I started tench fishing in the 80s, I mean, obviously I'm just a newcomer compared to you. Bread was the bait we went to, and then somebody tipped us off about sweet corn when Chris Yates suddenly broke the sweet corn thing. But we used to catch loads on bread. But that was the only thing that you used to think, is it still on the hook, when we used to sit there night fishing watching the float.
That's why you keep recasting. Well, I do. I keep recasting bread. Yeah. But I mean, I was looking back through the old Irish records, specimen records, which, as you know, I've got the.
Yeah, I know you've got loads.
I've got the whole set from 55 through to 2025.
Yeah.
I've got the whole set. I think I'm one of the only ones complete now. I was speaking to Paul McLoom in Nan Fisher's Island, and he said he didn't know. He said he didn't even think they had a full set of reports.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing in the last article. I was sorting them all out. They'd all got out of order for doing bits of articles for them, and I was amazed how far into the years that a tench was caught in Ireland. And that way it wasn't a tench, it was a rudd. It was the first fish to be caught in Ireland on sweet corn. That's reported. I mean, there's other people using them and catching on them, of course, but that was the first reported set or reclaimed fish.
Yeah. Okay, we'll push on to the next question now, because these are probably quite straightforward, a lot of these to answer. What era, if you could choose, to fishing, or would you prefer to fishing? So,
I swithered with this, and because of the way things are about, up to the age of 23 in England, up here ever since. Then, Ireland. I've most likely caught more fish in Ireland than the other two, England and Scotland combined. Because we did so well and caught so well, and it wasn't always angling skills. It was because we were up at 4 o'clock, and we fished till 11 o'clock. And then we had a rest, and then we went out in the evening when it was dark again. We happened to fish the right times, whereas the guests, they go up for breakfast, and we've got some of them, they come with us into Ireland.
Really?
Yeah. And they get up for breakfast, and they go out at 9, 10 o'clock.
Is that one sugar?
And expect to catch the same as the person who got out up at 4 o'clock.
Like Gillers.
That's it. Yeah. You see, you've hit it on the head. Oh, sorry, Andy. Did you take offence at that?
No, not at all, Dingle.
No, you can take your tongue out your cheek now if you like.
Well,
yeah, you're right.
People, you've got to fish when the fish are there. There's no point in fishing. You wouldn't go and watch a football match if they weren't playing.
No,
Would you?
Oh, that's a good analogy. Yeah, I never heard that one before.
No, I just made it up.
So, I mean, realistically then, I mean, that was your sort of halcyon days then, was probably 60s, 70s over in Ireland then, I guess, really then.
Yeah, well,
even
into the 90s,
yeah,
we were still catching tench because we specialised in them more than most.
Yeah.
But so, now you see in Ireland, I mean, they've come on in leaps and bounds. It's not many years ago, you had two hands and you could have named all your tench anglers. Des Howell and, you know, all these Jason Summers, etc., etc. You can name all your tench anglers, Keith, Berry. Yeah. You know, you can go on. And these were proper tench anglers, quality anglers, thought what they were doing, went to the swims when the fish were there, not when they weren't there. But now, when you look at the sites, the websites, you've got hundreds of young tench anglers now in Ireland. You know,
that's no bad thing,
and that's why they're catching so many.
Yeah,
because you've got anglers on the bank doing it.
Okay, next question. What angling book would you recommend to any aspiring
Fishing
tencher?
a big tench. No, Rickards and Webb.
Yeah.
And the only reason being is because they were there. I fished with them over on Coosan, and I got to know both of them, especially Barry. I mean, I was speaking to Barry too about 6 months before he passed. Bless him, he passed away. And we had a long natter. He was in bed ill. I was nattering to him, and he said one or two things. He was saying about not being able to get his book finished because of the Walker book that he was writing, and they were having trouble with it. And he got 2/3 of the way through the life story of Ray Webb, but he got, I think it was like 250 letters and little emails from Ray that he'd sent from the nursing home, and he got to read these, and he was going to read these, and that was going to be the last third of the book, or the last 2 chapters of the book, and because he died before he finished it. Somewhere, and I've written to his girlfriend, his partner, not Christine, he's the partner because he left Christine, and I've been in touch with her and asked and said, well, there has to be the manuscripts, the 2/3 manuscripts have to be somewhere, and a ghostwriter could quite easily read those letters and make the last third of it.
Collate it.
And I said most people might not want to know about Ray Webb. I said, but he was interesting, he was informative, and he was just a nice guy to natter to. I said, most people said, well, he's eating tree bark. I'm not surprised he lived on bloody complan. He needed a bit of roughage. So,
yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether they ever surface. So I take it you never got any traction with that then from his partner.
No, she never even replied. I don't know if I remember right.
Oh, well, it's a shame.
But I've written twice, and I've still got the letters. And but there are a number of good books now. I mean, it's because I don't read an awful lot that I can't comment on too many of them.
Okay, but yeah, you've answered that question anyway. What would you say the advent of the internet and social media, has it been a positive influence on angling?
I think it has, because it spread the word. And I mean, youngsters 6, 7, 8 are learning about fishing, which they wouldn't have done. And look, you got to remember, one has to remember when we were growing up, or when I was growing up, a lot of people couldn't afford the big prices of angling books, and they were dearer than most. You could buy a little paperback with Agatha Christie or whatever, you can buy for 69 pence. Your angling books were all up to 20.
Which, as you said, it was Bernard Venables, I suppose, and that would be the newspaper cartoon column that had probably got you interested. Yeah.
I mean, I've still got mine there. I mean, I've got it.
Crabtree.
I think I've got it. 8.
Mr. Crabtree goes fishing,
No, Mr. Crabtree and Peter.
Peter,
yeah. Yeah, I've still got it.
All right.
Lost the first one, but
I've tended to find when, because I know when I originally wrote that question a while back, and I was expecting a lot of people would say, with the advent of the internet, and they'd probably say, yes, there is positives, but there is this negative side of it. But I've noticed with some of the juniors that are turning up at our coaching events, and you say, "Oh, how have you got? How have you got into fishing?" Or the parents might say, "Oh, he's got into fishing. He's been on YouTube and he's seen these, and we don't know anything about fishing." And little Billy there, he wants to come fishing. So again, it's been positive, as you say. It's getting the word out there.
It gets the word out to the youngsters, and once they start, I mean, with your teachings, and a lot of these kids have not been on the right side of the law. That are going to these events, and but once they start fishing and catching a few fish, but that is the answer. You can't take a kid fishing unless he can catch fish. So you've got to find a fishery that's
productive fishery,
productive, and even if they're that size,
absolutely.
You've got to hold their interest.
Yes, I always call it. So it was something I remember from the first fish I caught when I was a kid on the. I think it's on the River Anchor, and it really was lightning strikes. All of a sudden, the float's gone, and you shout to your mate that's up the tree, "Oh, the float's gone!" And "Oh, you've probably got the bottom, mate." And you hit it, and it's there's something there, and that lightning strikes, and I often drive over that bridge down at Ratcliffe Cooley near Atherstone, not far from where Kenny Rowlands lived out that way, Fenny. If I'm going for a pint with Jacko, and I think, good grief, if I'd have only known that day when I picked that rod up, where it would lead. Well, even here today, I'm sitting here with you guys. So when that lightning strikes.
I can remember when they took me for the first time. My interest to start off with, in actual fact, was fish, not fishing. I was mesmerised by them. And there was a little stream at the back of my Aunt June and John's little bungalow down in Burwood, next to Ringwood. And they started off in a railway carriage. They used to pick the road that was built out of the village. They used to buy a railway carriage, and that was your land.
Right.
Mr. Pepperminch next door, he stayed in the railway carriage all his life and died there. Never built a bungalow. But Junior John had a bungalow down there. And round the back of the heather land was a lovely little trout stream. And I'm talking about when I was 5, 6. We used to take Towser for a walk, and I watched these trout going in and out and coming out for bits and going back in, and I was absolutely mesmerised by them. I mean, Auntie June said you could left him there all night and he'd still be watching. And then I got they took me down to when we used to go down to the Hampton Court. Mum and Dad and I, and we used to get off the little green bus and from Worcester Park to Hampton Court, walk across the bridge, and then walk down to the river where the mole comes out into the Thames. And because it was all bleak, the place was diving with bleak, and they fascinated me. Then all of a sudden, Dad came home with Brooke Bond's set of fish cards.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I put them in colour order. I forgot whether it was a predator or whether it was a carp or I actually first time and these are still in sealed before they go in the machine. So we took it in turns. One set, if it was the military or aircraft or whatever, the two of us would collect the same set, and that one person would have it. When the new set came out, the other person would. But the one who didn't would get a full set of cards still with
cellophane wrapped up.
Yeah. And as I say, I looked through these cards. Must have looked through them thousands of times.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the bloke next door, Ted Smith, he had a big garage in Croydon. He said, "Did I want to go fishing? Was I interested in going fishing?" I said, "Oh yeah." And I didn't have anything. He had a lovely wife and a daughter, but she was a girl, pink dress and white sandal types, and he's an engineer. Yeah, I mean, he had money. When I used to go fishing in a green, sports green Jag and cream upholstery, wooden leather upholstery.
I had a push bike.
You know.
He went fishing in the green jag.
Yeah. I'm serious.